And so 2024, 2023, 2024, very confusing times for people. They don't know where they are anymore. I don't recognize this world. I don't even feel at home anymore. I don't even know what to do. So a lot of people who are waking up, putting themselves into a bubble. I'm just not going to go out as much anymore. I don't even feel like I'm interested to hang out with my friends anymore. I just want to be left alone. A lot of people going into their bubble for protection, okay? They just don't fit into this world anymore. That is a signal, a sign that you're ascending, okay? You're wanting to protect you from going back to the 3D, 4D reality. It's a natural thing. So 23, 2024, all these realities are blended, very confusing. Starting 2025, Spirit told me now they're being detached. Chuck. 3D, 4D, and 5D are no longer blending, but they are still next to each other. And that allows the opportunity for people who are not yet awake to still wake up and cross from 3D to 5D. And so what's going to happen now in the next 12 years is every year it's going to go further apart.
My guest today is Emmanuelle McIntosh, who is a medium, a channeler, and a healer. And she spent one entire year learning how to trans-channel God or source, which resulted in a 1-hour video, and it almost ended her in the frequency and intensity that it was. And we're going to talk about that and much, much more. So, Emmanuelle, welcome from across the globe in France. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, thank you for inviting me. I'm happy to be here.
This is going to be such a fascinating conversation. And I think the first thing I actually want to ask you is, what is the difference between channeling and trans channeling?
Okay, so channeling is connecting to spirit and allowing spirit to communicate to you, and then somehow you find a way to translate that in a way that other people can listen in. Trans channeling is where we allow spirits to take over the physical vessel and talk through your vessel, and we're kind of put aside a little bit. We're a little bit put on pause. So we're still conscious, but we don't have much control anymore over what's being said, or sometimes the mannerisms change, they take over the body.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you for that clarification, because I really did not understand that until we were talking earlier. And I'm sure there are a lot of people watching who didn't also. So since you didn't have a near-death experience, and a lot of people I interview have had those, that must mean that you came in with some of these abilities already in childhood. So do you want to share with us a bit about your journey and how you've come to this place where you were able to trans-channel source?
Well, according to my parents, they started noticing that I would be picking up on things in adults that I shouldn't be, that shouldn't even be known. I was about 4 years old when they started to notice that I questioned why people weren't being honest. For example, my mom's best friend came in, and to me, she seemed very, very sad. But she was smiling and laughing, and they were giggling, and they were all having a good time. But I was asking my mom why she was so sad, and my mom didn't understand what I was talking about because she seemed very happy and very excited. And I kept asking, why is she so sad? And eventually, mom just kind of pushed me, like, go play, do something else. You're annoying me. And then a week later, she committed suicide. And so those were kind of the things I would be picking up on, what people were really feeling, what was going on the inside that they weren't showing on the outside. And so that's how my parents kind of started to notice that I was a little bit different, and then I would, at the age of 5 and 6, I would start talking about these very adult emotions and these very adult things that I could pick up on people that, I was just too young to understand that, but I would still say it. It would still come out of my mouth as if somebody else was trying to make something clear to my parents. And so that's how they noticed. But, I did have a dad who was very intuitive. And he would help spirits at night in his dream state to cross over spirits who were lost, couldn't find their way home. And he would share that at the breakfast table. Oh, I had this little boy, and he was on his little bike, and he couldn't find his home. And he had to help him cross over. And then the next day, we would see in the Gazette when we still read Gazettes. We'd see that a little boy who had been hit, had crossed over because he got hit in the back by a truck. So the spirit kept driving his little bike, never noticed that he actually transitioned. And so he ended up with my dad, helping him cross over. So we kind of grew up with those kind of things being normal, but it was not like that was the focus. It was just something my dad, oh, I had a weird dream. He just thought they were dreams. He didn't realize till much later, till I started explaining it to him what was going on, that he was actually helping spirits cross over. So, but they knew yeah, I was a very interesting kid, I guess. I knew things that they didn't quite understand how I knew, but I knew. So I always felt like an adult. I have to say, I was never a kid that played a lot. I didn't really play with dolls, and I was not a player. I was always taking care of people. Even as an 8-year-old and 9-year-old, I was taking care of my mom. I was taking care of my brother. I was always a caregiver, I guess. I always had a great sense of responsibility. I never really did anything wrong. I was way too good. I was like a gooshy tushy kind of girl. And my mom was always like, do something bad for a change. You're making me look bad. She would have to push me out the house. I was very much of a homebody. I didn't like crowds. I didn't like a lot, like big groups of people. I didn't like parties because it was so overwhelming on an energetic level. Of course, my parents didn't realize that at the time, neither did I. I just felt very uncomfortable when there was a lot of people, and I just felt like I was drowning in frequency. All that realization that I was actually channeling, and that didn't come till much later. That didn't come till I was about 21. I went through massive depression when I was 8 years old. I was a very happy child, but when I was 8 years old, my grandfather sexually abused me. And I didn't tell my parents because my parents were going through a rough patch as well. There was a lot of arguing in the house, a lot of poverty. They were struggling with poverty, and I didn't want to add more fire to the fire, so I never told them. But then, when after that happened, I became very closed off. I became very anxious. I didn't trust people anymore, and so I locked myself in my little bubble, and wasn't pretty much no social. There was no social activity at all till I was about 20, I think. I went to school, but I tried to avoid people. Had a very small amount of people that I actually talked to. So I became a very much of a loner. And eventually, when I was about 18, I really went into a heavy depression. I really went into a heavy depression, and I locked myself up in my room. I would just listen to classical music, sound like movie music, but classical music. And I would just lay there in my bed staring at the ceiling for hours and hours. Now, what I didn't realize at the time that I was meditating. Didn't, I thought, I'm just depressed and I'm just going to stay here. And I didn't feel like doing anything. I was scared to pick up the phone. Couldn't talk to people, couldn't go to a store alone. I needed my parents for everything at that time. I was so terrified of humans. And I really was drawn to animals because I could talk to them. I could hear them. They were my friends. And so I was going to be a vet. That was my thing. I didn't trust humans, so I'm going to be a vet. But I have dyslexia, so I really struggled with the massive amounts of learning material I had to absorb. And so after that, that didn't end well. I think the second year I had to quit. I was just too much. I became suicidal. Um, and so one day I decided, okay, do I jump out of this window or do I get on an airplane, fly over the ocean, go to America, and just get away from everything? So I decided to go on the airplane.
Good choice. Good choice.
Yeah, I went over there. I was terrified. Here I am, somebody who hasn't been able to function on her own for years, always needing mom and dad to do things for her because she had anxiety attacks and panic attacks, and they were severe. And I just put myself into the middle of nowhere. I didn't care. I was like, either I die here or I die there. I didn't care. I just needed to go. But it did save my life. I did end up getting to know myself better. I was forced to do it on my own, and it was only for a couple of months, but it really kind of gave me a better perspective of what I was capable of, and so on and so forth. And so eventually, I can write a book about my life. I've seen and done so many things. I've gone on so many very mysterious adventures, and but to make it a little bit shorter, when I was 21, I started to follow Thich Nhat Hanh, which was a Buddhist Zen master, and I went to go see him in Plum Village, which is right here in Bordeaux. And they really taught me how to meditate correctly, how to be more mindful, how to live in the moment. And that really brought a lot of clarity of who I was and what I was doing. Because in those meditation sessions, all of a sudden I would hear voices and I was like, okay. Um, and the first voice I heard was one of my guides, Eric, and he said, why do you keep wasting your time trying to do what other people are doing, trying to fit in? So he got kind of mad that I was trying to be like everybody else. He's like, this is not who you are. This is never going to work. Because I had tried jobs after jobs after jobs, and everywhere I was like, this isn't me. This isn't me. Like I would just move from one thing to the next. And during those meditations, it became very clear you're different. Um, I didn't notice that. I swear I had no clue that I was different. I thought everybody could feel certain things and hear certain things, you know. And I remember at my jobs, I was kind of like a magnet. I was a manager. I mean, I did everything. I worked at a bakery, I worked at a store, but everywhere I went, people would come to me and go, what do you think? What do you feel? What do you think? What do you feel? They would tell me their problems, they would tell me their stories. And then I was like, oh yeah, I feel this and I feel that. I never realized that I was actually channeling information from somewhere else. I thought I was just really clever at giving advice. Right? I was like, wow, and then all these predictions that I was telling these people, and I'm like, oh yeah, I feel like it's October or something, this is going to happen and that's going to happen, and then everything's going to be okay. And then they came and they're like, oh my God, it happened exactly like you said. Every single step was correct. And I just thought, wow, I'm really good at this advice thing.
Wow.
And then it just started growing from there. Then I started, people started coming to my home for advice. And then I started using the tarot cards because I was like, I must be using something here. But eventually I noticed I didn't really need the tarot cards. It was just kind of a safety net, just because people want to look at something, not just me going crazy, going blah, blah, blah. Um, and yeah, it just started growing from there, and the realization came in, and the healing started, and because I had to really heal from that sexual
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah, I bet you did.
It was about a year of abuse, and it really shook me to my core. But Yeah, eventually everything became much clearer. Everything was there to guide me to this point where I was supposed to help people. And um, it was very educational. I mean, I know that what I went through was so traumatic, but man, did I pick up on every frequency of every emotion possible, because you go through an emotional roller coaster when you're in a depression, when you're suicidal, when you're anxious. There's so much complexity in the emotional roller coaster that happens. But I needed to have that experience because it taught me how to translate, how to tap into what that feels like. That emotion is that frequency, that experience is this frequency. It programmed me to better translate the energetic frequency of the emotionality of people. And because of that, I think I'm a better channeler, because when if people, for example, just show me a picture of someone, I can give you a detailed description of what's going on the inside of that person, what they've been through, what they're going to go through. And it's just because, you know, um, I have gotten the experience of every emotion that I was going to have to help other people with in the future. I needed to experience them firsthand so I could recognize the frequency and then later on be able to help people with those emotions that some people can't even put into words. They feel them, but how do you truly express them? They don't need to do that for me. I can just feel them.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, I have a couple things I want to ask you. This is so fascinating. And so, first of all, I'm deeply sorry for the trauma that you experienced at the hand
Oh,
of
it's
your
okay. It's part of the
grandfather.
plan,
But a lot
It's
of
part
people
of
that
the
are,
spirit plan.
well, exact, and that was exactly where I was going to go on what I wanted to ask you. Because when people tune into these conversations, a lot of times they can relate to things.
Mhm,
And you being vulnerable and sharing this, it sounds to me, because of the comment that you just made, that you feel maybe that was an intentional experience that you set up for your soul. And
mhm,
one of the things that people that I've interviewed who have had near death experiences tend to say is that everything is unfolding perfectly, or everything is happening for me and not to me. And when somebody like you has had an experience and you can talk about this, I think it
mhm.
has the ability to help people that are watching who may have experienced something else and have a lot of anger around it. So, would you like to take a moment to speak about that a little bit to the people who are watching who may have had a similar experience to you?
Mhm. Well, I think what we need to realize, the first thing that I had to realize is this is only a virtual reality. This life does not define you, nor does it color you. It's simply here to offer experiences in order to better understand just how loving you really are, just what your essence is made of. And in our natural state, in the higher vibrational planes and the higher dimensions, we're not capable of truly getting to the nitty gritty of who we are, right? Because these higher vibrational frequencies, those lower vibrations, the pain, the suffering it's not possible to have those experiences up there. So we create a virtual reality in order to have an experience. But in all honesty, I discovered through my healing process that I am not really here. Neither are you, Lori. We're actually just, we're in heaven, what people call heaven. Heaven is not one place, it's a multi-dimensional place where lots of places. But in those higher frequencies, we're always present. So therefore, even when we lose people here on Earth, we actually see them every day when we go into our deep sleep. We wake up and we go, "Hey,
You
ooh,
just
it's an
gave me
incredible
goosebumps
day
all
there
over.
down there," And then we go back into our REM sleep, and then we forget everything. That REM is to erase the memory that we went home. Um, so I had to realize that first. And the thing is, a lot of people know that this is just a virtual reality, kind of like the Avatar movie. You got the blue body, but he's not really the blue body, is he? He's actually in his booth, and his consciousness is being placed into the blue body. So that's really kind of how it works. We're always in our natural state in the higher vibrations, right? So when we choose to have an incarnation, only part of our consciousness is being projected into the physical vessel, right? And then we have this temporary experience. And then when we die, we simply wake up. Dying is waking up, kind of like, wow, that was an intense dream. That's kind of what it feels like, right? So we're not really here. We just project part of our consciousness into a temporary state, a virtual reality, so we could experience aspects of ourselves that we cannot experience in our natural state. With that realization, I started to think, well, so everything that's happened to me didn't really happen to me. It was just there to provide experiences that would offer opportunities for growth, for better understanding, for self-love, but also for compassion, for forgiveness. I've forgiven my grandfather for what he's done. That doesn't mean that I approve of what he's done. It doesn't mean that I want to see that for people in the future. We want to try and move to create a society where we are based and founded in love and not on hurting each other. That is the ultimate goal, to have that evolution, that expansion, that ascension, to become more aligned with who we are in nature by going through the process of growth. But it is that growth and that opportunity for growth that can only come from difficult experiences like that, because you got to be able to have both sides. You got to feel completely lost in order to feel completely found and to feel whole again. So we need to have both angles. And well, if you're going through a really hard time, if you're going through, could be anything, could be loss. People are grieving, their whole world collapses, children are being lost, spouses, family members. It could be being out of a job and not knowing how to support your family. I mean, those things are devastating. It could be illness, it could be permanent illness. Some people are born with illness. um, there's always a reason for it, and we have to, I'm not saying it's great. I'm not saying life is a piece of cake. Even now, with that knowing, with that, understanding, sometimes you just get pissed off. Sometimes you're like, why is this always happening to me? But we really have to allow ourselves to get mad. It's okay. You got to give yourself a day where you just mad. Okay? Just let that emotion, that human emotion appear, because that's what you're here for. The emotional content of the human being. So you can allow yourself to have that day. But then I learned that I give myself one day, and tomorrow we accept and we try to see, what am I learning from this? And even if you don't know, I'm going to accept it anyway. I am ready to accept whatever it is I will be learning from this, even if at this time I don't know yet what that looks like. So I move into an acceptance mode, and then eventually it shows itself. And then I go, I get it now. I get why that was coming. So it's difficult being in this human body. But ultimately, you have to understand and accept and operate from. And the thing is, that's the thing. It stays, for a lot of people, it stays as an idea, a belief, but your belief has to become you. It has to infuse your actions, your reactions, your emotional content, everything. And that's the hardest part, is how do I get from what I know to be true to how do I become that truth? Because a lot of people understand universal truth, but a lot of people have a hard time acting and reacting from that truth, because their autopilot takes in their programs of fear, and manipulation takes over. And so a lot of people are in a state of duality. They know what the truth is, but they don't live it. And it's because mind and heart are not aligned. And that's the hardest bit of the journey. But it's really important to understand you're never a victim. And I was a victim for a very long time. I felt very victimized. I felt like the world was out to get me. The fear that he had placed into me really took over the steering wheel of everything in my life. I couldn't function anymore. I couldn't have a normal relationship. You know, it really took over. But there comes a point where you have to understand that this is your creation and everything is a choice, but really everything. You have a choice to allow that person who hurt us to continue to hurt us, even though they're no longer in your lives. They continue to hurt us if we choose to allow their fear to continue to make the decisions in our life. Or you can see the truth and become that truth. And the truth is, you're the ultimate creator of every decision in your life. Everything you attract is in resonance with what you feel, not with what you think. You can visualize all you want, it's not going to manifest anything. It's our emotional center that manifests. You have to feel your truth. Visualizations are there to create emotions. We use the visualizations to, oh, if I can see it in my head and then I can feel it because I can see it. Because humans have a thing, they got to see it before they can feel it. That's what visualization is. It's just a tool to help you feel things, but ultimately it's your feelings that manifest and create your outer reality, because it is just a projection of your truth. How you see the world, how you experience the world, how you experience yourself, how you choose to experience others, what you choose to believe, what you choose to love. Your outer reality simply is a projection. Just imagine there's a little camera here, and your entire world around you is a blank canvas. And what you know to be true, your reality will be projected on there. How you perceive the world. And that's what people don't always understand. You know, the world is not one place. There are an infinite amount of parallel versions of that same earth, according to which frequency you choose to align with. So what you sometimes see as truth, other people will not see, and that's where people start headbutting. No, it's not like, and you can show them the proof, you can show them your proof, they're still not going to believe you. They're still not going to go with your version because they are unable to see that proof or to see it the way that you see it because they're on a different frequency. So my spirit always says, everybody's right. Everybody's right, because everybody's experiencing their unique version of that same collective earth. And
That's
that's
crazy. I
something,
love that you said
people
that.
people
Everybody's
need to
right.
understand that. There would be a lot less war and bickering and judgment. And if people understand the complexity of our reality, there is not one reality. We're living in an infinite amount of parallel versions within different dimensions. And so you have 3D, you have 4D, you have 5D. Most people are now waking up into a 5D reality, but we're still visually observing the 3D reality because the two parallel dimensions are right next to each other. And over the next years, they separated beginning of 2025. Over the next 12 years, they're going to get further and further and further apart. And eventually we won't be able to see the 3D reality, but certain people will continue in the 3D and the 4D, and that's the thing. We still have relationships with people who are in these different dimensions. We can still communicate. We can still hang out. We can still do things if we choose to. But eventually it becomes harder to communicate on the same level because what you will say will be received differently from a person who's operating on a different vibration. So the words that come out of your mouth will be perceived differently if you're in a different dimension. That's why sometimes it's really hard to communicate to people who just are not at your level of understanding.
Yeah, that
It's
makes
all
sense.
frequency. Everything is energy. It's all frequency.
Right.
So we have to be more kind to each other. We have to accept that this might not be your version of reality, but it is their version of reality, and it doesn't make it less true.
So you just oozed wisdom. You shared so many things in what you
I can
just
go,
explained. So I want to just recap a couple of things, and then I want you to dive deeper into the last part of what you just said, because you
okay.
talked about something I haven't really heard anybody explain before. So first of all, I want to say that what I heard from you, the big encapsulation of what we go through on a soul level, is that we can't be harmed on a soul level. So what is happening to us is just for our own experience, and that is the gist of that part. And then the second part is the manifestation, which I thought was also equally as powerful, where you said it's not the visualization that creates the manifestation, it is the emotion that sets into motion the creation with that the blank canvas around that we are projecting, which also I thought was a very brilliant way to explain it. So that was crazy. But then you went further and blew my mind when you said, you said, we have separated 3, 4, and 5D realities, and it happened already. And now, over the next 5 years, those are going to be moving further and further away. I've not heard anybody say it quite like that. So I would love for you to elaborate a little bit more on that. And where in the world did you, I know you channel, so where in the world did you get this information about how this works?
It's just something I've always known. I've talked about this to my mom since I was 10. I think I just have access to certain information. My mom always tells me, I just have to ask you a question and for 2 hours straight, you will just start blabbing up information. I don't read books. I don't do, I've never studied any of this. I just know things without knowing why I know them.
You're
And then I usually
claircognizant
just get
then.
confirmation. Yeah, I just get confirmation from spirit, but they're like, hey, you already know. So I don't know how I know, but I know. And then spirit always confirms afterwards. And then I go, is that right? And they go, yep. So, okay. So the way that I've perceived it and the way that they've confirmed it is, um, so in 2012, that
Mm.
is when we switched. So the Incas called that, well, they mistranslated it, the end of the world in 2012, but it was really the end of the cycle. So what happened is, so we have male energy and female energy. It's not the gender, okay? It's positive, negative, okay? Male energy is all about building. It's about conquering. It's about, creating structure and things like that, right? Female energy is all about nourishing. It's all about loving. It's about caring. It's about healing. Okay. Um, so in 2012, the male energy was done. Okay. That was done. And it was slowly but surely being replaced by female energy. Okay. On a global level. Again, has nothing to do with male or female on a gender. Okay. It's just a frequency. The frequency is different. And for a lack of better words, we use male and female. So in 2012, everything started to shift on an energetic level in this temporary reality. Okay. It is real, but it is virtual because we're not really here. Okay. But everything that exists is to some degree real. So 2012, we get a massive shift, and the earth is going with that. Okay, the earth is starting to cleanse, the earth is starting to release a lot of negative energy from the centuries before, and so on and so forth. And so that's when the ascension started, was 2012. And with that ascension, that means that everything that is negative, everything that is untrue, needs to be revealed, needs to show itself, needs to come to surface. And so in these 12 years, in these past 12 years, they're 12-year cycles, two 12-year cycles. The 3D and the 4D which are very close, very blended in dimensions, okay? The 3D and the 4D slowly started to reveal all the manipulation, all the, the ugliness that's going on in this world. And as that is going, the 5D was being created by the light workers, by the people who are like, I'm done with this world. I want something new. I want something better. I want something more healing, more loving. 3D started to become a reality. Okay, but that's an idea. It's not a world yet. Okay, and we're also not moving planets. Okay, again, it's a different frequency of the same Earth. Okay, but it became a reality. And so over those first 12 years, the 3D and the 4D is revealing all the nasty enough that needs to be healed. And slowly but surely, light workers and people who are waking up are starting to create and build the idea of what 5D should look like, because we're the creators now.
Can I get a
3D,
clarification on your time that you said? You said 12 years. So are you talking about
yeah,
2012 to 2024? That's when this is
to the
happening?
end of 2024.
Okay.
And
Okay.
then beginning of 25, we have another 12-year cycle where the dimensions are apart. I'll
Got it.
explain. So as 3D and 4D are going through the changes, the cleansing, the reveal, all the nasty stuff. Okay, that's why people are like, I don't recognize this world anymore. It's because it's all being revealed. It's always been there, but it was hidden. Okay, only now it's being revealed. Those two dimensions were created for us by the entities who made the human race. They made those dimensions for us. They were the creators of the 3D and the 4D reality. 5D reality is a higher vibrational place where these entities can't follow us. This is a whole other story. We'll get back to that later. It's very complex, okay? So the 5D is now finally being created by humanity itself, not by those who made us in order to enslave us, in order to control us and use us, okay? 3D
Are you
and
talking
4D,
about
they made
Anunnaki?
that. They
Anunnaki?
made our prison.
Okay. Yeah.
We're now making our own home in a 5D reality. And I'll tell you later why they can't follow us there. So as 2012 starts, 5D becomes a reality. And in the 12 years, it becomes closer and closer and closer and closer and closer. 2024, it's a whole mess. Why? 3D, 4D, and 5D are all blended together. They're so close that they're starting to overlap. And so you're seeing things in the world that are really nice and loving, and animals are changing, and animals are helping animals, and crocodiles are helping antelopes to cross, and that shouldn't be happening. Normally, they should eat each other. Things like that. You see wonderful things, but then you also see very ugly things, right? And so 2024, 2023, 2024, very confusing times for people. They don't know where they are anymore. I don't recognize this world. I don't even feel at home anymore. I don't even know what to do. So a lot of people who are waking up, putting themselves into a bubble. I'm just not going to go out as much anymore. I don't even feel like I'm interested to hang out with my friends anymore. I just want to be left alone. A lot of people going into their bubble for protection, okay? They just don't fit into this world anymore. That is a signal, a sign that you're ascending, okay? You're wanting to protect you from going back to the 3D, 4D reality, okay? It's a natural thing, okay? So 23, 2024, all these realities are blended, very confusing. Starting 2025, Spirit told me now they're being detached. Chuck. 3D, 4D, and 5D are no longer blending, but they are still next to each other. And that allows the opportunity for people who are not yet awake to still wake up and cross from 3D to 5D. Okay, we'll just skip the 4D, but it's pretty much the same thing, 3D and 4D. Okay. And so what's going to happen now in the next 12 years is every year it's going to go further apart. Dimensions are going to grow, they're going to change. And why are they changing? Because now people who are rooted into the 5D are starting to build this world. And how do we build our world? By infusing it with energy. And how do we infuse it with energy? With our love, with our visions, with what we want to see, what we want to see healing. We want our children to be safe again. We want healthy foods again, healthy skies. We want nature to grow again. That's what we want, right? So we're infusing that 5D reality with our thoughts, our knowings. Everything is going to be okay. We're going to be fine. We are infusing that. So slowly, as we're infusing that, we're building that. And as it's building, it's raising its frequency. And so it's getting further and further away from that 3D. Just think of a skyscraper. You're getting higher and higher in the elevator. Every time you create something new for 5D, 2D, 3D and 4D are kind of staying in the same place. It's negative, it's bad, but everybody else is moving up. And so eventually you won't be able to see each other. After 12 years, we'll be completely separated, and we will not have the ability to communicate with people who choose to freely remain on into 3D and the 4D, because not every soul wants to go through the awakening. Not every soul is signed up for an ascension. Some souls really want to have that dark, negative experience on that 3D reality. Does that kind of make sense? So
Yes.
12
Well,
years to bring the dimensions together so we can hop. We go, just think of two continents coming together, and then now the ocean is getting bigger between us with the years that are coming starting this year. And eventually there'll be a whole ocean between us. We won't be able to hear each other anymore. That's basically what's happening.
okay. So
Okay.
this, I'm
But
trying to
on a
imagine
frequency level.
how in the
And so
world would this
why
work?
can't those people, those entities who created us, who enslaved us, and so on and so forth, why can't they follow us in the 5D? They're too low in frequency. They can't. Anybody who believes that the only way to have control in their life is by controlling others is low in frequency, because this is your reality. You do not need to control anybody else. You simply need to guide your own energy, and that will create your outer reality. That's high frequency, is understanding that we don't need to control anybody to control the outside world. We simply need to guide our own our own projection, our own emotional content in order for the outer world to adjust it to the frequency of the inner world. Do you understand? So they still believe that they have to control us. They have to manipulate us in order to be in power. That is the complete opposite of truth. Therefore, they are too low in frequency to even follow us in that 5D reality. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So in 20, all right. So we're talking about 12 years from last year, essentially. These videos live in perpetuity. So who knows when somebody's watching it. So I try to be careful of
So
what I say.
starting 2025 is when they separated, but they're still very close. So family who might not be awake, they still have 12 years. It's
So
going to get
12 years. So
harder with each year, though. It gets harder to make the jump,
what's it going to
but it's
look
still
like? So
possible.
I'm trying to imagine like 2036. So like somebody's married to somebody, one person decided to be more spiritual and went into the awakening, and the other one is just
Mhm.
agnostic, just kind of there. All of a sudden you wake up and they're not there? Do you see a disappearance? What in
So
the world?
the way that spirit explained it to me is a lot of relationships are going to fail because the more you change frequency, the harder it is to communicate. And when there's a difficulty communicating in any relationship, arguments happen, misunderstandings, and they start to break up, they start to separate. Families might separate, jobs will go. If the job no longer resonates with you, it's going to have to go. And even you don't have to do that. The universe will do that for you, because it's all about not being able to relate on a frequency level. So you already see that now. There's people who feel like their friends are different, and they're not. It's just you're changing, they're changing, and you're no longer matching. So it's not like you're going to wake up and all of a sudden your husband disappeared. No, it's going to be relationships breaking before, because they have to move into different directions. A lot of people are crossing over. I remember when I talked to Yeshua with the whole the V thing happened and the C thing and all that disease that we can't talk about, otherwise we get censored. Um, Yeshua told me, because I was very sad. I wanted to save everybody. And he said, you can't save them all because a lot of souls are going to choose not to go through the ascension, but they also going to choose not to stay in the mess, in the negativity. So a lot of souls are going to choose to go home through illness, old age. A lot of souls are actually going to go home and then be reborn in the 5D because it's simpler. Uh, but there's got to be pioneers who are creating the 5D, and those are the light workers and people who are ready to go through the change. You have to become a new version. Spirit told me in order to go into a 5D dimensional frequency, you kind of have to let go of the 3D version of you, because how you operated in the 3D to survive doesn't work up there. And you have to change from being in work mode, because that's what we did in 3D. We're always working towards a goal, working on ourselves, working to change things, working to manifest things. And we have to move into a being state, which means understanding that what you become on the inside reveals itself on the outside. You'll be attracting towards you. You don't have to work towards it. You have to become that frequency. You have to work on yourself to feel as if it's already here, to visualize and feel it, and act every day, live your life with the knowing that it's already within your reach. It's created the moment, and that's the truth. The moment you think of something, just thinking about it, just something coming into your ID, it exists already on some frequency. And it's really about us changing and feeling that presence already to attract it. And then we do take steps. You don't sit in your couch and wait for it to show up on your door, but it's about feeling your way towards every step. What do I feel today that I need to do to move a little bit closer to the frequency where it is? It's really about changing and molding yourself to become your truth, instead of feeling like it's somewhere out there and I need to go find it. If it's out there and you've convinced yourself that everything is separate from you and it's over there somewhere, it's always going to be over there. You're never going to get it. You have to understand that everything is a projection of you to some energetic level. Everything is a projection of you. Even the people that surround us, to some degree, the version that you see is a projection of how you are experiencing that person.
Mm,
And that's like, that's a
it
hard brain
is.
freeze. That's a brain freeze right there. But
Totally.
over time, you'll get it. But we're very complex beings. And people look at humanity in such a simplistic way that you lose just how magical we are by ignoring the energetic self. Energy is everything. It creates your health, it creates healing, it creates your being, but it also completely creates your reality and what you choose to experience.
I
So
agree.
that understanding really helped me to look at my past and see all the struggles. And there were many, even with mom and dad, and they had problems and they were fighting every day. And I was trying to separate them at 7, 8 years old, and taking care of my dad, who was, he was an alcoholic at some point. Unfortunately, he had a lot of demons, but very good man, what a golden heart, but he was so lost. So I was always, trying to help and heal everybody. Yeah. Does that make sense?
It does.
I
This
mean,
is
it does
so
to me,
good.
but I never know how people are perceiving what I'm trying to explain.
Well, I feel like the people that are meant to hear this message will find this message. That is really and truly the way that it works. And when somebody's ready for it, it finds,
Hmm.
it finds the person that's ready for it.
Yeah, we got to match the
That's
frequency.
right. Absolutely. Well, so speaking of matching the frequency, one of the things I talked about when I introduced you is that you took an entire year to work
Mm,
on the frequency to be able to connect and trans channel source. Will you explain to everybody why you decided to do that, how you were motivated to want to spend a year to do that and what the ultimate outcome was?
Well, I had been channeling celebrities and things like that because people really love the stories and they want to know the truth. Who was this person really?
So before you answer that, then who's the most interesting celebrity you ever channeled?
Oh man, that is difficult. They've all been very interesting, every single one. I mean, I love Freddie Mercury because he's just one of my favorites. He's always around me. I've loved him since I was a child. So, but Bruce Lee was very interesting. Nostradamus, Edgar Casey. I mean, they're all wonderful,
Or what
wonderful.
did you learn maybe that you were surprised to learn?
The thing is, I don't remember much of those interviews, and I'll tell you why. I have dyslexia, so I really have a dyslexia is a short-term memory problem, and I was born with it. And So whenever I do a channeling, because I'm not really there, I sort of pick up on information, but I don't really, um, how would I explain it? Well, let me tell you differently. So because of my dyslexia, um, I will remember things that are not intense, right? When I have private channelings, I will probably remember some of the things we talked about after an hour of channeling, but I think after an hour, 2 hours, everything's completely gone. I have no memory of what was said, what was discussed, and so on and so forth. And Spirit has told me that's intentional because they knew I was going to have to process so much information from so many people. I do over 5,000 readings a year, which, it's intense. So it would blow my mind up if I would have to hold on to all that information. So it does have intention. But when I do trance channeling, I kind of have to get out of the way for spirit to walk through me and to talk through me. So I am conscious, but I don't really pick up and register what's being said. Now, I've tried to look at my own readings. I've tried to look at my own trance channelings, and it's just weird to see me act and behave differently than me. So I don't really rewatch them. But I have to say, yeah, Yeshua that was intense for me, and I'll tell you why. I was not raised with any kind of religion, so I always thought Yeshua, Jesus, whatever you want to call him, I thought he was a made-up character, to be honest. And then I went through a very traumatic experience, and I remember crying in my shower and I wanted to quit being a channeler. A lot of stuff was happening, a lot of lies were being told about me. And I was like, if I was getting threats, my children were getting death threats. You're a witch, you should be burned at the stake together with your children, things like that. And I was like, if it's like that, I don't want to do this. Find somebody else to do the work. I don't want to do this. So I was breaking down in my shower, and I was about to quit channeling because I didn't want to put my family in danger. And all of a sudden, I hear this voice, and this voice goes, "You will be crucified before you will be believed and treasured," is what the voice said. And I realized that that was Yeshua. And I was like, I told him in my head, "I thought you were a made up character." I really did. And he started talking to me, trying to give me courage to keep going. And he said, doing what we do is the hardest thing in the world because you don't really match the frequency where you're being placed. A lot of light workers feel that way. We don't fit in here. It's like doesn't we're trying to make this our home, but somehow we always know that it's not our home. So it's really hard to fit in. And he was explaining to me that he went through that as well. He was so high vibrational it was difficult to fit into a very low vibrational reality. So it really helped me, one, to realize, wow, he's real. And two, I'm not the only one going through hard times where you're being attacked and, where your integrity is being questioned and things like that. I was just trying to help people. That's always been my only intention. So yeah, that was very intense. I mean, I loved Robin Williams. Oh,
Oh,
his energy, it was so sweet, and he just made me laugh. And as I was working with him trying to trans channel, he kept cracking jokes. So that was a lot of fun. I love Gene Kelly too. Gene Kelly said, keep learning, he said. He told me he was learning languages, and all the way up to the day he died, he was always trying to learn something because it kept his brain very, very young, he said. And he was talking about you should always dance. Dancing keeps your body young, keeps your brain young, but also lifts your vibration to such a degree that you actually are in a meditative state when you dance. So I really thought that was very interesting. And that's also why, he said, I lived a long, good life. He was dancing all the way up to, his death, because of that. So, yeah. And then, yeah, that was so
it wasn't
intense.
just you, it was you and somebody else, and somebody was asking
So
questions.
I always have somebody who asks the questions of the audience. People can send in their questions, and then
Oh, these weren't your questions, these were
no, these are
your
not my
audience's
questions. No.
questions.
So I have a Patreon page, and if I do channel someone, they can send in their questions, and then my colleague would select them. I didn't know the questions. She would choose them. And I would send her all the questions we got, and then she would pick the ones that she thought were the best ones. Um, and so in order to channel source or God or whatever you want to call it, all that is, that, I mean, it's so hard to put into words, but the energy is so intense. Every time I tried to connect, one, I started crying, bawling like a little baby, couldn't control the outpouring. And two, I always, when I channel, I have this pressure here. It's a natural thing. I always feel it. That's kind of how I know I'm channeling, there's always a little slight pressure. But my head felt like I was going to explode into a million pieces, and the crying they wouldn't stop. Later on, I discovered they told me crying, they recommend crying as much as you can because crying is a tool of the body to release energy that's too intense. Right? If we hold on to things, we can actually self-combust. Believe it or not, our bodies can self-combust if we don't express these energies. So my body was constantly crying. I couldn't get any words out because I'm just bawling because of the intensity of the energy. So every day I worked at, okay, 2 minutes. Okay. Okay, we can manage two, and after a week it was 5 minutes. Okay. So it took us a year for me to really even be able to contain this energy into my physical body. And I think it was even only like a percentage of what it really was. But I mean, that's all the human body could handle. So it took me each day to try about 30 minutes to contain and hold the energy and to even allow that entity, which it's not a he or a she, it's kind of an it thing, a conscious, loving entity, uh, to even be able to speak through me and for my body not to disintegrate.
Wow.
So, but even it was difficult. I mean, I felt complete exhaustion after 5 minutes. I had to go lay down for 2 hours and sleep. So yeah, I think people underestimate because everybody's always like, "Oh, come on, channel the celebrities. They love it." And I get it. I haven't done it in a while, and the real reason for that is because we were going through the ascension. the energies were so scrambled up that I couldn't hold the spirits into my body. The energies were too unstable, and you can kind of register that. You see that in the Schumann resonance. It's just up and down and it's all over the place. So I kind of stopped channeling or trans channeling spirit. I continued to channel, but I couldn't trans channel because of the instability during this ascension time. So I'm hoping at some point the energies will become very stable again and I'll be able to do it again. But yeah, when it came to source, that was one hell of an experience. But I did manage to get to an hour after an entire year of kind of allowing my body to adjust to the energy. But yeah, it took a lot out of me. A lot of people don't realize that. They think we could just switch something on and it's there, but it does physically do something to your body. And I've known some good mediums personally who are not on YouTube, but who actually, because they take on too much work and they don't balance out and cleanse and do all that, they actually get very ill. Because you have to understand, when we channel, we have to force our frequency to a higher space. And then spirit forces themselves in a lower space, and somewhere in the middle, we're meeting up. But when we force ourselves into a higher vibration, we're also forcing the vibration of our physical body, our cells. Every single cell in your body has its own vibration. And the reason it's physical is because it's in a lower vibration. It creates the illusion of physicality. But we know everything is atoms just bouncing around in empty space. It's not really a physical thing, but it creates the illusion because we're in a very low vibration. The faster you vibrate, the more invisible you become. That's why we can't see spirit. It's not because they're not there or they're invisible. It's simply because they're going at a much faster pace. So our eyes do not have that frequency of range. That's why animals can see them. Dogs, cats, they can all see them because their eyes are on a much higher frequency. But so every time we channel, we have to force ourselves to vibrate at a much higher frequency. And so it's not really that great for the physical body. It puts a lot of strain on the body. And so that's why it's very important as a channeler to really find balance. People think we can channel all day long. It's just not possible. We really have to take care of ourselves. We really have to recharge. We really have to connect to nature, absorb the energy from source. It is constant managing your frequency, making sure you're not getting overexhausted. Otherwise, illness starts kicking in. And I've seen excellent mediums getting cancer, getting autoimmune diseases, and then they have to stop doing what they're doing because it's just not manageable anymore. So
Yeah, that
yeah,
makes sense.
it's a trick. Being a channeler is not easy. It really is a trick of finding balance and recharging and cleansing and recharging and cleansing. So yeah.
Can you share maybe what one of the best messages or the best received messages from Source were?
I think, the important thing there was a lot of information about black holes. There was all kinds of questions. What is a black hole and all kinds of things like that. But I think, a lot of people wondered, why are we here? And is there such a thing as a recycling? Are we being forced to reincarnate and all of that stuff? And it all came down to, you're just here to experience yourself and you can make life as you choose. There's no, because a lot of people were asking about contracts, well, if I have a contract to experience that and I don't want to, can I just change that? And the answer was yes. They're not really contracts, he said, or it said. We just have to understand that this is our creation and we can also change it, but we have to change our frequency to do that. We have to gain more self-knowledge to understand that the reality is what we choose it to be, even if we're choosing without knowing that we're choosing it by our actions and our reactions. So ultimately, the best to me, the best answer was, you're the creator, not me.
Because I think people tend to give their power away,
Yeah.
especially in religion, to these different religious heads, I guess I'll call it that.
Yeah, because Source said, I'm just experiencing myself through your creation, and it's really, it's really valuable. It allows the energy of all that is to constantly transform itself, but it's completely free willed. There's no forcing. Um, it is your us. We are God experiencing itself through our creative means, our creative minds.
Yeah,
So it's really what it is, because a
amazing.
lot of people are like, well, what does God want us to do? Nothing is what the answer was. You can do nothing and you can do everything. It's what do you want to do? And source will provide, is what he said. Source will provide whatever you request, but make sure you're requesting the right information. Source provides by matching your frequency.
So you're only going to get what you are able to
What
match in
you're able to
frequency.
send out. Yeah, and if
Makes
we're in a
sense.
fearful state, we'll get more fearful things. If we believe that things are separate from us, they will always be separate. You'll never get them. We have to become our truth. We have to understand that everything is an extension of your energy. Even the physical things you want is an extension of yourself. And so therefore we really have to match the frequency of what we want to experience. But ultimately, a lot of people think, why are we being punished? Why is there so much suffering? Why can't God come in and change everything? Because God is respecting your creation. You're creating collectively this energy by going along with the manipulations, by going along with the story that they've told you, and not by, hey, wait a minute. What if everything they've ever taught us isn't the truth? We just accept it because people said that that's how it is. We accept it because scientists say that that's how it is. But now it turns out that a lot of the things that were based on science weren't based on science at all.
You
It
kind
was
of
just
come
based
back full
on some
circle.
idea. And without proof, it was accepted as truth.
You came back full circle, Emmanuelle,
Hmm.
because you said in the very beginning, things that are not real are being shown.
Exactly.
So I would imagine that people that are watching, especially since you do so many readings, and I've got to ask this question about the readings, 5,000 readings. I did some quick calculations. If you're reading 365 days a year, that's 14 people a day. Are you doing shorter readings?
I do a lot of group readings.
Group readings. Ah,
Yes.
that makes a lot of sense.
Otherwise, it doesn't
I was
work.
like, well, so are you doing, have you done readings where you're in just a bigger group, like an auditorium or a room or a luncheon where it's a lot of
Yes, I've
people
I,
and
I've done those. I do events, all day
okay,
events.
events.
Um, for some reason, a lot of people in China like to do group readings. So, yeah, I have people all over the world. So, I'm pretty much covered the globe except for North Korea.
Well, I love it because
Um,
you and I had a conversation before we started this interview, and you talked about how you speak 5 languages, but it doesn't
yeah.
matter the language that's being spoken. You're connecting to the vibration. So we explain that just a little bit so people who would want to work with you would understand how
Well,
that works.
and I don't understand all languages, but I always feel what the conversation is about. So, my dad was very good at languages too, because he was also very connecting to energy. So everything is vibration, and that includes words. I get a lot of names, dates, family secrets come out of my mouth that nobody knows, and then they go, and then they're in shock. Um, and it's not because I know all those things. It's just simply because I can translate energy. So spirit communicates to to us, not with language. A lot of people say, "Oh, why is this spirit speaking English while they're speaking Spanish and they're, when they were alive?" Because spirit doesn't use language; they use frequency, kind of like a song, right? I'm just the radio. And when spirit communicates, or when I look at a picture and I get information that comes from a collective source, or the archives, the universal archives, or whatever it may come from, um, it's all frequency. There's a song in the air. All the information we need is actually accessible to all of us. Okay, but we have to learn to tune in. Naturally, I did that. Somehow I was born with that natural tuning in system. And so when spirit communicates to me, it's kind of like a song that's being sent from a radio station. It's in the ether, but we don't hear it until our radio picks up on it and translates it in a way that our senses, our human senses, can understand and receive it. That's kind of how it works. Same with me. I'm the radio. They send the invisible song, and somehow that comes out in words and mannerisms and all kinds of weird stuff sometimes. Sometimes I get ticks, and people are like, "Oh my God, my grandma used to do that all the time. She had this tick." Sometimes I have weird stuff that comes out. So when it comes to language, words have frequency, right? The intention behind the words, when we
Sure.
speak, we fill automatically, without us knowing, we fill that word with a frequency. An emotional content is being attached to that word. And so a lot of times, I speak 5 languages. Well, I'm Belgium, so I was raised with 3 languages. We have 3 languages in the country, 3 official languages. And I also followed Latin, so I did 6 years of Latin. So that helped me with Italian and all that stuff. But even now, here in France, where I'm at, they have this dialect, and a lot of times I have no clue what the words mean. But when they talk, I can tap into the energy of the conversation, and I know exactly what they're talking about, even though I don't understand all the words. I
Sure.
know what they're saying, I know what they're talking about. I know what the subject is, and I know what they're complaining about. Usually it's complaining. People like to complain about the world. But I don't need to know all the words to understand the entire conversation. I can just tap into the energy of the words, and then somehow I that translates into my heart. And then that's another thing. It doesn't translate into words. It translates into a knowing. I know what the conversation is about. I don't think about words. I think about, what are we talking about? And I
Mm,
feel it. I know it.
sure.
I think that's why it's easy for me to pick up and even speak languages. When I talk to somebody in Dutch, or I talk to somebody from Australia or Ireland or Scotland, my accent also changes. It's almost like I tune into the vibration of the dialect, and I will start talking with that dialect. It's really freaky.
Well, it makes a lot of sense because when I listen to you speak right now, even though you are in Europe and you've lived most of your life there, you don't
Mhm.
have a really like any type of an accent that I would be able to pinpoint really where you were even from.
Yeah, I don't know. I do. I mean, I am married to an American husband, but I spoke, according to my mom, because I didn't learn English in school until I was 14.
Hmm.
But even when I was 3, 4, starting then, I was watching BBC and I could completely understand everything they were saying. Also, which weird is, so my native language is Dutch.
Hmm.
And ever since I was a little girl, I've thought in English. So I've known English since I was born. And Spirit tells me it's just because I've had a lot of language, I had a lot of previous lives in English. So it's just kind of the way
Huh.
I triggered.
Makes sense. So you've
It's
got
weird, but yeah, even now, when I think, when I have that inner conversation with spirit, with myself, with higher self, with who knows where that voice comes from, somewhere up there. It's always in English. So although that's not my native language, I only started speaking English when I met my husband. So you know,
Wow.
I
That's pretty
understood English,
cool.
but I didn't speak English until I met my husband.
Hmm. So the people that want to connect with you, I know you've got a Patreon channel. I know you've got a YouTube channel. So tell us
Yeah.
where we can find you.
So I am on Patreon where I channel weekly. So there's over 200 channeled posts there. There's an interview there with what really with the captain of the Titanic, for example, what really happened, what's the truth. Um, Basically, can share their question there about anything. And then Spirit every week will choose a question, and then there's extensive posts. They're about 3 to 4 pages long, the channelings. One day I'm hoping to put that all into a book because I could probably have enough for 3 books right now, but with my dyslexia, I have a hard time putting it all together. I don't know how to make it into a book. Everything's written. That's the weird part, isn't it? With my dyslexia, I cannot, for the life of me, I failed every class when it came to language. I was really horrible at it. I couldn't do comprehensive reading. I had such a hard time. But when I channel, 4 pages come up and not one glitch. That's the weird part. But anyway, so patreon.com/Emanuelle McIntosh. You can find me there. I try to keep it as low as possible for everybody to access. It's only €3 a month, and you can come and go as you please. Some people sign up for 1 month and then they come back a couple of months later. You always have access to the channel posts. So I do weekly channelings on there. And then I also, once a month, I have a channeling of Yeshua where he shares wisdom with us, where he shares guidance, and so on and so forth. And then you can find me on my website, EmmanuelleMcIntosh.com. And then I also have a YouTube channel. I have a TikTok channel. I always forget I have it, to be honest. I need to spend more time on that. But yeah, I mean, you can find me around. Type in my name, first 10 pages, I'm sure you'll find me.
Well,
Somewhere over
I'm thinking
there.
that you're on the precipice of being able to just upload all of that information into AI and let it sort it out and put it
That is a
together.
good idea, but I am so technically I am challenged when it
Yeah,
comes to computers. I am so old-fashioned. I still write letters, that's how old-fashioned I am. I still write letters and Christmas cards. Everything, I write it down. When I channel, I write it down and then I type it up.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm very old-fashioned in that
Well,
matter.
that's okay. That's all right. Well, Emmanuelle, this has been such a wonderful conversation. You've shared so much for everybody that they're probably going to have to go back and watch it again because it'll be those
Yeah.
gold nuggets hidden in there that you can't absorb if you just listen to it one time. So, thank you so much for wanting to share this with the world. I know you are a huge part of what is happening with us helping to take us to the next level with this 5D reality and helping us to create a better, more positive collective consciousness. So thank you so much.
You're very welcome. And I want to thank you as well for being a part of the light working society that's here to help channel positivity and love towards people, but also create our 5D reality with us and heal, the 5D, the 2D and the 3D and the 4D, really heal those lower dimensions. So, I want to thank also all the other light workers out there and just everybody who's brave enough to really think with themselves, sit with themselves, and be brave enough to realize that there's more to this reality than what meets the eye. So thank you for being brave enough to look behind that curtain. Just give it a quick peek. There might just be something there very magical that's waiting for you to be discovered. So
I agree. Yep.
everybody, thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for watching. Next up, check out this playlist of other NDE interviews. Please like and subscribe. It really helps this channel to grow so I can bring you more content. Thank you for watching. I'm so glad you're here.